Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to take a look at the Neewer HB80C. This is an 80 watt RGB WW mini COB LED video light. Now, I've reviewed several of the 60 watt level mini units here in the past, and I really like this configuration where it comes with either a built-in battery, like with the small rig that I reviewed, or in the case of the Zhiyun Molus, it comes with this battery grip that attaches to it and kind of practically accomplishes something similar. Now, in this case, obviously, the Neewer HB80C, it steps up the level to the 80 watt range. And as you can see, that does come with a bit more size. However, it also comes with much more battery life in my test. This is a 72 watt hour built-in battery that gave me nearly 80 minutes at 100%, which means that it's going to be really useful amount of actual battery life. Also, it is brighter and it is more versatile in terms of the light output. Remember, this is an RGB WW light, which I'll get to in just a moment. But I tested at 1 meter distance using the included reflector / beauty dish. I tested it over 8,000 lux at that 1 meter distance, so putting out lots of power. But I think one of the really important things to those that are serious about modifying their light and want to work with multiple lights is the fact that it's big enough that it comes with full Bowens mount compatibility, which means that rather than having to use proprietary mounts and thus more expensive accessories, you can access the full range of accessories that are available in a Bowens mount, which of course at this point is a massive amount of them, and very likely if you have any modifiers already, you'll be able to use them right on this particular light. So as noted, this is an RGB WW, so that's not just the red, green, and blue chipset, but it also has a warm white chipset. So just an additional option for giving you more flexibility in terms of the light that you can produce, the color temperature of that light, and the various effects that you can use, and even some built-in gel presets that can be very useful as well. It is COB, which stands for chip on board, which means that it's more efficient, it's brighter, it's just a better, more modern technology. This particular light, you can power it via AC, you can power it by the built-in battery, you can power it via a V-mount battery, or even a battery bank with a good power delivery PD rating. And so this particular light gives you a ton of versatility, and we're going to dive into a little bit more detail as to why I'm loving this light, and it is going to be a regular part of my video production for my channel moving ahead. So a few of the specifications to get us started with. So this is, you have the ability to control this via a Bluetooth app, which of course gives you a lot of versatility. The Neewer app works quite well. I've used it for a variety of different products, and obviously at this stage I'm very accustomed with it, so it's pretty seamless for accessing this. You can do 2.4 gigahertz control if you're happy to run multiple lights. You can sync those up, and of course sync them up and thus control from one unit, control the other unit as well. The maximum power output is 80 watts as mentioned. The battery parameters, this is a 14.4 volt, 5,000 mAh battery, or a 72 watt hour battery. And so by their specifications, we'll get to my actual test in just a moment, but it is tested in the regular mode, 100% output. The battery life is rated at 1 hour and 10 minutes or 70 minutes. If you put it into the mute mode where outputs just diminish just a little bit, it's rated for 1 hour and 34 minutes. And so obviously, if you're running it at lower intensity, you can get a lot more light runtime than that. Charge time is 2 hours, and that is due to the fact that unlike some of these lights that charge in more like the 30 watt range, this will charge in the 60 watt range for input. And so you can actually charge it from 0 to 100 in just 2 hours, which is not bad at all. And so the input for power can come in power delivery 3.0, and there are a variety of different levels that you can run at in terms of the voltage and amperage combinations. It's quite versatile in the kind of input that you can take and run it off of. Now, what's interesting here is that it's not just power delivery for the input, it's also power delivery in the opposite direction as an output. And we'll get more back to that in just a moment. Now, the maximum illuminance here is 10,400 lux. and that's at 4400 Kelvin with the reflector at a closer distance. Color temperature range, if you're just choosing kind of the bicolor options, you have a good diversity running from 2500 Kelvin on the warm side up to 7500 Kelvin on the cool side. So definitely better than the more typical like 2700 to 6500 range. You've got a little bit more floor room on the warmer end and a little bit more headroom on the cool end. You have a variety of different lighting modes you can access: CCT, HSI, RGB, WW, XY, gel, source matching through the app, and then of course the various effects that you can use. There are 18 different scene effects that are available. The CRI rating is 95 plus, the TLCI rating is 97 plus. So a lot of interesting specs there. So all of that you could get by just taking a look at the listing at Amazon or at the Neewer website. But how does it actually play out in my real test? So first of all, let's take a look at the power output. And so I used a lux meter, and I did a couple of tests in 3 different configurations. First of all, I tested at the 1 meter distance that they have ratings for. I also tested at the 3 meter distance to just give you an idea of what kind of light you're getting when that light has spread out, like if you were lighting a set, for example. And so using the bare light as seen here at 100%, and at 4000 Kelvin. The actual brightest intensity is at 4400 Kelvin. So I wasn't quite at that. I was just using kind of a midpoint. So at 4000 Kelvin at 1 meter, I got right under 3500 lux. Now, if we throw on the included beauty dish slash reflector, the output obviously is going to increase. And so again, at 4000 Kelvin at the 1 meter distance, I got over 8000 Kelvin, 8031, 8100 range is what I got. At the 3 meter distance, I got at about 800 lux. And so still a pretty significant amount of light that is reaching me there even at the 3 meter distance. Now it is a separate accessory, but it's very well priced. And by the way, I really like, I have plenty of circular soft boxes. I wanted to try their actual hexagonal one. So I like the fact that it is very easy to configure. To actually get this into the mode like that is very useful. It also comes with a honeycomb type grid or a diffuser you can throw of it. But just in this configuration, using this, obviously light's getting a little bit softer, spreading a little bit wider. But even so, I was able to get at that 1 meter distance, I got about 5000 lux of output. And then at the 3 meter distance, I got 524, and then up, different readings, but between 524 and up to 600 lux of overall output and rating. And so anyway, I really liked the overall configuration of this particular accessory. And of course, it is part of the versatility that comes from having that full Bowens mount configuration. Now, some of the other tests that I did were with the battery life itself. And so using the internal power at 100% full-on mode, I actually exceeded the rated power. It's rated for 70 minutes. I got 79 minutes. And I noted I was in the same room with it while it was running that whole time. I never actually heard any kind of fans. I was about 5 feet away from it. Never really heard any fans running. So kudos on that. I will also note that it does charge at 60 watts of that input. And as far as the output, if you're wanting to charge something off of it, it actually is rated at a PD 65 watt specification. So that could be extremely useful if your phone's going dead on set. Maybe even worse if your camera is going dead on set. Ability to plug into that and get a sufficiently rating of power and the output to actually charge that up could obviously be extremely useful. Now, I was a little bit surprised when I hooked up to a 99 watt hour V-mount battery. And so in theory, that's about 31% more capacity, between 31 and 32% more capacity. So I would have expected a longer output than what I actually saw. Surprisingly, however, though, I saw the battery blink out at about 83 minutes. So only 4 minutes longer of runtime. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the actual efficiency when it comes to the fact that you're actually when you're using a V-mount, you're really charging the unit itself, so maybe there's some lost efficiency. I will note, however, that when I was running this smaller light at its maximum output with a 99 watt-hour V-mount battery, I only got 80 minutes out of that. So I actually got a little bit more with the much brighter, higher output of this particular light, which, by the way, even though it's only 20 watts of higher rating, I actually found that the light output as compared to these units was actually twice as much. And so a really impressive amount of light that it's able to put out. Now, when it comes to using this for other settings, so using it for portraits, for video, I did use it just to test it for doing some portrait work that I was doing and testing some lenses. Obviously, having the Bowens mount compatibility is great because you can shape and diffuse the light in a variety of ways. And so I have used it for main light. I've used it with some fill and accent lighting. And so that was great. I found in doing that, I was able to get really nice soft light like for these particular portraits. I actually like using sometimes even a hybrid of this light maybe for, for key lights or hair light, and then, strobing. It's a nice thing to do. And for those that are kind of intimidated by strobing, a good versatile fixed light like this can really take the guesswork out of it. It's kind of like portraits for dummies, because you don't have to guess about the modeling of the light. You can actually see the light on the face of your subject or subjects, and so you can see if there's shadows being cast in a certain direction, and so very useful for that. When it comes to the video lighting, I mean, there's plenty of power here, and so I also, the ability to be able to run it in RGB mode can be interesting, or gelling it. But I found that the biggest thing that I noticed in using this versus these other units is that, number one, because there's so much more power output, I felt like I had more flexibility in diffusing that if I wanted something softer. I've actually been using this light pretty much exclusively for my channel for the last while because it's really great for that regard. And the fact that the battery life is longer. I'm typically on set recording for about 20 minutes at a time. So rather than feeling like I need to recharge it every time, I can actually shoot, 2 or 3 episodes and not worry about the battery life of the light running out. And so I really appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that it does charge nice and efficiently, and it doesn't really slow down in topping it up, which I definitely run into with this particular unit. It's that top end that seems to take forever to finally get to 100% charge. So finally, I'm going to give you some things that I like, some things I don't like, and then my conclusion. As far as things that I like, this is the most powerful self-powered light that I have seen. And so yes, a little bit bigger form factor, but man, it kind of feels worth it to have that extra runtime. And of course, I'm not using it any differently than what I use the small lights anyway. So I kind of like that. I really love the fact that rather than getting a battery time that that undercuts what it's rated for in real world use, I actually exceeded the rating in real world use. That was the opposite of what I got in testing the small rig, where I actually found that it cheated a little bit by cutting down the power output, throttling back about 3/4 of the way through the battery life to make the battery last longer. That isn't the case here. Intensity kept up until the end, but we got tons of runtime out of it. I appreciate the fact that it charges faster, and so even though it's a much larger battery, I can charge it to 100% in 2 hours. I appreciate the fact that it has the multiple power options and a lot of versatility through the power delivery input and output on that. I like the fact that it comes with a nice carrying case and some useful accessories in here. Accessories like that include a great grip / tripod that you can put out there, and so that is useful. I appreciated the fact that the actual charge cable that comes with it is really long, and so if you're actually wanting to do some cable management and have some kind of power solution that's further away, has a nice included cable there, which I appreciate. Obviously, it does come with the beauty dish / reflector and a nice case that is useful. Obviously, there is a range of accessories that that aren't included but are reasonably priced, which is kind of Neewer's calling card. I appreciate the fact that this actually has quite a useful interface. Sometimes these things are a real pain to navigate. I tend to prefer using the actual Bluetooth app a lot of times because the inputs on them are just kind of confusing. I like that. And on kind of a practical thing here, using some of these units like this, you turn it on, but then to actually power it the rest of the way on, you have to rotate this dial until it comes on. I don't know why that's a necessary step, but I really appreciate the fact I can just turn this on and it comes on. I don't have to jump through any hoops. A much more useful screen configuration here. It shows you more information. It's easy to interact with. You can switch through the various modes very easily. It's just a really cool setup and configuration, and certainly one that I appreciate. Not hard to navigate at all. I love the fact that we have full Bowens mount right here. And I understand you can't do that. Bowens mount exceeds the size of these smaller units. But the problem is that if you want to use any kind of modifiers, you end up using an adapter, and you kind of kill the smallness factor of that. So I like the fact that it's big enough to go ahead and use the Bowens right there. I love the fact that it runs quiet and cool. RGB mode and RGB WW is useful here. Bluetooth control is great, and their app works well. And of course, you know, as I've said about Neewer, it's really priced really aggressively. Only $239 for this light, and that's before any kind of sales or discounts. That's great. Now, how about some things that I don't like? Just a couple of things that I will point to. One of those is that the actual battery life indicator is just the center circle at the top of the unit. So it's not particularly big. I would prefer just a more obvious percentage indicator that gives you just a little bit more of a real-time indicator of where you're at in the battery life. Obviously, this is also not going to be quite as bag friendly, and this mount, by the way, that I've got on the light stand, it is included in the kit itself. But this is as small as the form factor is going to get. So yes, you still could put that into a camera bag, but obviously it's probably going to need to go in flat and take up multiple lens spots because it's just not as small. Still portable, but just not quite as small, so not as bag friendly. At the end of the day, however, I feel like this is a really amazing value at $240. It's not really priced any higher hardly than these smaller units. In fact, it's cheaper than this unit if you throw in the battery grip, which you kind of need as a part of it. And so it's a great value. I mean, the fact is that the V-mount batteries in this range that have just very slightly higher output than this particular unit, those V-mount batteries are running right about this same price. And so it just feels like a really strong value for that amount of money. And even though, yes, the size is larger, the extra size, to me, it feels worth it for the greater output, longer battery life, and full Bowens compatibility. I actually really love this unit, and I suspect I'll be using it a lot moving ahead. So if you're interested in having one as well, or doing a little bit more research, there is obviously going to be links in the description down below for you to explore. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great day, and let the light in.